Hello, brains! Dr. Ned Hallowell is a leading ADHD expert and a New York Times bestseller who's written many books on ADHD, and he's also a brain. Hashtag ADHD and successful. We've mentioned him on the channel a bunch of times. He's the nicest guy ever, and today he's a guest on this show. Keep it together, keep it together, keep it together. Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Hallowell.
It's my pleasure, Jessica.
This is just such a privilege. I have to say, when I first started my show, I was terrified that you or somebody of your caliber would find my channel and tell me to take the whole thing down because I was doing everything wrong.
Well, you know, that's a very typical kind of ADD thing, and I'm glad you just plunged right ahead because, as my daughter once said, you don't want to hold back on life out of fear. I think a lot of times folks with ADD do feel insecure and so they don't go ahead and try, and you're a great example of someone who went ahead and tried and you've succeeded wonderfully. And you know, I would have never written a book if I had given in to my fears. Before I wrote Driven to Distraction, I thought, I don't know enough about this. I mean, I'm not a bench scientist, I'm not Russell Barkley, I'm not Peter Jensen, or what right have I got to say anything? And I just went ahead and did it. And I think that's one of the great lessons for people. You know, you don't want to be reckless, but at the same time, you don't want to be so cautious that you don't actually do anything.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. But there is a lot of self-esteem and doubt issues that seem to come with ADHD. And even once you do start becoming successful, there's the imposter syndrome that goes along with it. How do you deal with that?
Well, my favorite rule is never worry alone. You know, so my wife can tell you, you know, I wrestle with self-esteem issues all the time. My wife knows all of, she could practically alphabetize them, you know. And I think it's just part of ADHD for whatever reason, and we can speculate as to why. And so I make light of it, and that's another way of dealing with it. I also look at reality, you know, I've done good things, and most people with ADHD have done good things. So you want to always appeal to reality, because we do have a terrible tendency to dwell on the negative and overlook the positive. The book I wrote about worry, I began with an opening scene where I was giving a lecture, Grand Rounds at Harvard Medical School, and at the end of the presentation, I got a standing ovation. But there was one woman in the back of the room who was scowling. And when I got home, my wife said, "How did it go?" And I said, "Well, there was this woman at the back of the room who was scowling." Well, she was wise enough to know, to ask them, "Well, how about the rest of the room?" And I said, "Oh, they gave me a standing ovation." But what I dwelled on was that one woman scowling at me. So we ADDers, we lose perspective, and we often dwell on the negatives. And that's why I always say never worry alone. You know, do some reality testing. You want to worry with the right people, of course, but you want to have supports around you where you can be real and be honest and get the kind of reassurances that we really do need.
I mean, I know that I personally am more sensitive than probably most of the people I know. Do you find that that's common with ADHD, where we're just kind of sensitive to the idea that somebody might not like us or we didn't do a good job?
Totally. You see, well, I think one of the core qualities of this interesting condition, which I don't see as a disorder, I see it as a trait. And if you manage it right, it's an asset. But one of the interesting parts of it is this uncanny intuition. We can really see into people, see into situations, see around corners, and that allows us to perceive a lot of good stuff that other people don't see and see connections that other people don't see. But then we can also pick up on, you know, the slightest hint of rejection or the slightest hint of disappointment, and we jump right on it and magnify it, and we think, well, the whole response was negative when it really wasn't. So sort of the price we pay for being so intuitive and so sensitive is that we can be easily hurt. I don't think you can make that go away. What you can do is develop tools for dealing with that, tools of repairing yourself. And I have to repair myself every day. Many times a day I'm repairing myself, you know, and putting Band-Aids on these little wounds. And most of the way I do it is pretty much my solution to everything in life, which is through connection. The human connection is the most powerful one, but my little dog, Ziggy, my Jack Russell, he solves a lot of my problems. Just sitting in my lap, licking me, you know, and so connections of all kinds are sort of the universal remedy, I think, for most of life's problems. And the problem with life today is we're super connected electronically, but we're disconnecting interpersonally. So we don't have the deep friendships that we really need. We have a lot of superficial friends, like on Facebook, I have 10,000 friends or whatever. Those aren't friends. I mean, they're blips on but the depth of friendship, the depth of support that really gives human existence its resilience, a lot of people are missing. So I always say to people, lead a richly connected life. Connection to friends, to family, to nature, to the past, to ideals, to the world of knowledge, connection to some kind of spiritual reality, connection to dogs. Everyone ought to have a dog, by the way. If you can possibly have a dog, have a dog. They're the greatest thing in the world. And I prescribe dogs for all my patients. If we had more dogs, we'd use a lot less Prozac. So, and then as you connect robustly to all these different points in your life, you'll find something wonderful happen. You develop a positive connection to yourself and to life. So you feel good about who you are and you feel good about life itself. And that's a wonderful thing. When it gets going, it's like a beating heart. It just keeps going automatically.
I've found the same. I have a dog for the same reason. I get massages. I used to be a massage therapist. Like the power of touch and connection with other people, I think, is really powerful. But actually, a lot of my own healing happened when I connected with other people with ADHD. And it happened through this channel, and it was completely unexpected. People were suddenly real with each other. I was getting real about my struggles, so other people were getting real about theirs. And that sense of connection was powerful, even over the internet.
And you're doing a great thing. I mean, this is what the world needs now, where it's safe enough to be real, safe enough to be vulnerable. Here I am 67 years old and I still don't have it all figured out, and the best thing I can do is to be honest and say, yeah, I feel insecurity about this, that, and the other thing. And next thing you know, other people are helping. And the goal of independence is a very foolish goal. What you want to be is effectively interdependent. So you can give and you can get. You can give and you can get. No one is independent.
How do you do that without falling into codependence?
Well, codependence just means you're too far in the other direction. And by the way, people with ADD have a terrible habit of doing that. We tend to fall for train wrecks. We can really get hurt that way because we're so generous. We tend to be so generous, so giving, so empathic, so understanding. Oh, I really see the good in you. I can draw out the good. We're soft touches. We can be taken advantage of very easily. I've been taken advantage of many times, and I just keep on giving, it's just who I am, but I've learned with my wife's help and other people to be a little bit more cautious, but you do want to try to stay out of those codependent relationships where you're just too much the caretaker, too much the giver. So you want to be able to get as well as give, and that's a life skill on its own. And I think what makes this condition so interesting, and the term ADHD is a terrible term, I think it should be renamed interesting person syndrome or something like that, or creative person syndrome. The entrepreneur's trait, it's something like that. But there are so many of these qualities that intermingle, positives and negatives, and often two sides of the same coin. Impulsivity, one of the hallmark symptoms of ADHD. What is creativity? But impulsivity gone right. You don't plan to have a creative idea. You don't say, 10 o'clock, time for my creative idea. And lay it like an egg, it comes spontaneously, impulsively, it depends upon disinhibition. And that's my model for ADD. So you've got a Ferrari engine for a brain with bicycle brakes. And I say to people, don't worry, I'm a brake specialist. So if we work together, we'll strengthen those brakes so you'll win races. But if we don't, a Ferrari with no brakes is a dangerous car. So it's worth taking it seriously and learning how to strengthen those brakes.
That's it for this week, but Dr. Hallowell will be back next week for one more episode featuring his advice on how to find the right job and how to actually stick to it.
We tend to be people who like to work. We like to get into stuff, and we do best when we're busy. If we're not busy, we often get depressed.
Click subscribe so you don't miss it. Or do you click the bell? Click the bell and the subscribe. Click all the things. But if you just can't wait till next week, you can listen to me and Dr. Hallowell on his show, The Distraction Podcast, right now. DistractionPodcast.com, link in the description. And there's so much more coming. Edward and I are finally back home, and we have so much to share with you. There's the big mental health panel from VidCon you haven't seen yet, with me and a bunch of cool YouTubers, including Hannah Hart, and road vlog wrap-ups from VidCon, and my TEDx talk. What? I'm not tired, you're tired. Of course, huge thank yous to my Patreon brains. Without none of this would be possible. Look for special goodies on Patreon soon. Tell me what you thought of the amazing Dr. Hallowell in the comments below or on Facebook or Twitter, and I will see you next week. Bye, thanks. Question time! Haley Nash asks, I was wondering if you could make a video on ADHD and dyslexia. Yes, dyslexia isn't something that I experience myself, but many people with ADHD do. I'll start the research now, so look for it sometime next month.